All right. This chapter is called A New Way. And a lot of this is going to probably sound kind of ridiculous because of how much we know now. All right. So this is a new way of looking at the universe. So we are going back in time. Basically. All right. Educated people at the beginning of the 16th century would have believed the universe was shaped like a piece of paper, an apple, an egg, an onion. And maybe if you saw the first picture, then you'll know what the answer is. Unless you don't know what this is and you thought it was an apple. If you were an educated person at the beginning of the 16th century, you would have believed that the universe was shaped like an onion. So like this. Onion. People believed the planets and the stars were being pushed by blank because movement seemed unnatural. Angels, gravity, the Pope, physics. You would have held a geocentric view of the universe. That is, you would have believed the Earth was the center of all things, and surrounding it was layers of revolving, transparent substances in the shape of spheres. Stuck into these layers of invisible material were the sun, the moon, and the planets and stars. So basically, in the center, you've got the Earth, and then you've got kind of these further rings that do have like contents in them, not empty space essentially. And that, well, the next part, because you would have believed that motion was unnatural, you would suspect that the planets and the stars were being pushed by angels. So in here, you'd have like the sun in one of these things, and little angel was like, boom, pushing this around, pushing it all the way around in a circle. And same for the rest of it. So all right. Whose job was it to find practical solutions to ordinary problems? Magicians, alchemists, blacksmiths and engineers, natural philosophers. So this is ordinary problems. All right. This was the universe of Ptolemy. So we don't say the P. Ptolemy, a Greek astronomer and geographer who had lived almost 1,300 years before the Renaissance. Ptolemy remained the most important authority on astronomy in the early 16th century. However, this orderly picture of the universe was about to be challenged. In the Middle Ages, people relied on religion to answer questions about the meaning of life and people's relationship to nature. Religion, however, offered little on day-to-day physical matters like how to increase the speed of ships, how to fire cannons more accurately, or how to cure diseases. Behind these kinds of questions was the big question: how is the physical world structured? For the answers to concrete problems in nature, Europeans relied on three major traditions. All right, tradition one. The first tradition was the one practiced by artisans and engineers. It was their job to find practical solutions to ordinary problems. So artisans and engineers. Who were the wise men and women in villages that used omens, herbs, and spells to explain the works of nature, and they tried to control it by these means? Ah. Oh my goodness. All right, let's see. Blacksmiths worked at improving horseshoes and swords. Engineers erected dams and built roads. Together they invented windmills and plows. By the 16th century, these men had attained a down-to-earth understanding of the way nature operated. Sometimes they could even control it. The bigger picture, however, was left to somebody else. Okay. Tradition 2. The second tradition was that of the magicians. They could be found at all levels of society. So-called wise men and women in villages used omens, herbs, and spells to explain the works of nature, and they tried to control it by these means. So we're not talking about magicians like we would talk about today. In a sense, you're talking about what would be in like a wizardry and sorcery and stuff like that. So anything from what Harry Potter to whatever. I can't think of any other movies. I'll list them in the chat. In the cities, learned alchemists experimented with strange liquids, powders, animal parts, and metals to unlock the secrets of the universe. So these are people who are going to just take natural things and mix them together. The idea of like potions and stuff like that. They sought to control nature by turning one element into another. They also experimented in curing wounds and sickness. Others, called astrologers, sought to understand the future by reading secrets revealed in the stars. So probably, yeah. So be careful with astrology and astronomy. Astronomy is the science. Astrology is like the Leo, Sagittarius, Cancer, Gemini, and also there's like the Chinese zodiac and other ones. All right. Although these magicians went about practicing their arts in different ways, they all believed that nature was organized in regular, predictable structures. If one could discover those orderly structures, then one could command the universe. So again, this is very much like wizard sorcery kind of thing. All right, so wise men, magicians. Who were the people that sought to understand the future by reading secrets and stars? That's the astrologers. Right. Who were the men that were found in universities that believed that the nature of the universe was revealed in ancient books? And you should know which one this is because there's only one in here that hasn't been mentioned yet. Engineers, natural philosophers, blacksmiths, alchemists. So this is tradition 3. The third tradition was practiced by natural philosophers. These men could be found mainly in universities. Here it was believed that the nature of the universe was revealed in ancient books. Their favorite author was Aristotle. They also read Ptolemy's works on geography and astronomy and Galen's writings on medicine. The Renaissance interest in ancient languages and books added to the natural philosophers' understanding of these authorities. By the 16th century, scholars had already begun to graft new ideas onto older theories. For example, Renaissance mapmakers used Ptolemy's ideas to make their own maps of the world, much of which Ptolemy had never known. So they're kind of just adding on to things that people had speculated on. So people had these ideas and they wanted to just kind of add on to it. This is how we're going to start getting the whole, oh, we find this out. Well, we have so much evidence for this that this other thing cannot be true, essentially. Who was confused because Ptolemy's geocentric view of the universe did not always explain the observed movements of the planets, and so wrote a book where he supported the heliocentric view. Aristotle, Copernicus, Kepler, or could be Galen. Galen? Probably Galen. If I know how to read English. In the 16th century, these three traditions began to come together due to the printing press and the rising interest in the natural world. A good example of the results can be seen in the ideas of Nicholas Copernicus. He was perplexed because Ptolemy's geocentric view of the universe did not always explain the observed movements of the planets. For instance, at times the planets appeared to be moving backward around the Earth. Nothing in Ptolemy's theory would explain this. Copernicus solved the problem by proposing a radical solution. In 1543, he published a book entitled On the Revolution of the Celestial Spheres, which argued that the sun was the center of the solar system, not the Earth. Let's go back. Helios means sun, just so you know. All right. So this is Copernicus. And then we go into the humors. We know that I made this. Laughing jokes, pranks, improvisation, blood, phlegm, and red and black bile, water, air, earth, and fire, science, language, math, and social studies. All right, let's go back up here. All right, this is the heliocentric or sun-centered view. He said that the Earth and other celestial bodies were in constant motion around the sun. Copernicus provided a more consistent explanation of the planet's movements than did Ptolemy. As widely held as this view became, it would be almost a century before Copernicus's theory was proven. However, this Polish astronomer inspired a new generation to observe the sky differently. All right, here's your actual humor, so you can, even without reading down here, see it. So yellow bile, fire, black bile, earth, phlegm, water, blood, air. Well, part of it anyway. Another pioneer in modern science was an alchemist known as Dr. Paracelsus. He realized that knowledge about the human body came only from close observation and experimentation. His science led him to reject the early 16th century notion of the four humors. The humors were believed to be the four main fluids in the body: blood, phlegm, and red and black bile. According to the reading, what was the first characteristic of modern science? That'll be the last one. All right. They were also known as hot, cold, wet, and dry. Most medical doctors at the time believed that health was maintained by keeping the four humors in balance. The common practice of bloodletting, which involved draining controlled amounts of blood from the body, was intended to correct an imbalance of the humors. An individual's horoscope at the time of birth was also thought to influence one's balance of the humors. Therefore, astrologers were as important as medical doctors in achieving cures. Paracelsus's experimental methods led him to believe that an illness could be treated and cured with medicine designed for just that illness. As a result, he laid the foundation for use of modern medicine. So, in a sense, not using bloodletting to balance stuff out. More like, there's a sickness, let's find the medicine. Other pioneers followed Copernicus and Paracelsus as the practice of modern science continued to develop in the 16th century. By the mid-1500s, 3 central characteristics of modern science were widely accepted. First, it was important to be boundlessly curious. So that's the answer there. Second, a scientist should reject old assumptions and methods unless they could be proven true. Third, the way to test ideas was through experimentation and careful observation. Because the important discoveries during these years were so radical, historians call these developments the scientific revolution. So revolution is a large change. It's not, and that's important to know. I spelled curiosity wrong. Well, let's put it in there like that. All right. And so then you should be able to submit that. So this is kind of going into the old stuff, and we're going to kind of see how that changed. It won't surprise you to see the changes, because that's going to be kind of, a lot of it is more similar to what we believe now. A lot of this, to look back at and be like, what in the world were they thinking? That's a little bit harder.